Ready or not, here we come. South side, west side, east side, north side. Up on the run, we ain't for the none. We came in the party, we here for the fun. Celebrate life, the party we young. Sky's the limit, we looking above. We up in the sun, no matter what, we stay on the run. Ha, SWork, do your thing. SWork, keep it lit. Bullseye, keep your aim. Yeah, we up on the jib. North side, that's the way. Ready or not, here we come. SWork, keep the energy. Look, yeah, we never unplug. SWork, show some love.
Social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works. Social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works. Yeah, SWorks. Everyone put it in their hands. You know it's a vibe. They're waiting in line to get up and flood up the stands. Yeah, we in this together. We feeling like fam. It's all about peace. So pull up with friends. You better come through with you and your crew, cause everybody going in. SWorks, so we keep it lit. You can see how we move the city from the west side to the east. Ooh, you can feel it how we leave through. It's all about the youth. Change the world through the tunes. Make the world to a better place. And SWorks, what we do.
Social works, social works, social works, social works, social works. Social works. Keep my family out the dirt. This organization, we stopping no Satan and open, but we call it SWorks. Action on tailor the killer verse. I do on my family, my city hurt. They killing our babies, this war going crazy. I pray for my city to reimburse. Running schools for the kiddies. We the city, yeah, we litty. All I know is to swerve. With the heart, keep it busy. Know the life can be tricky, but please just let me finish. Let me just be a witness. SWorks handle business.
Social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works.
Ready or not, here we come. South side, west side, east side, north side. Up on the run, we ain't for the none. We came in the party, we here for the fun. Celebrate life, the party we young. Sky's the limit, we looking above. We up in the sun, no matter what, we stay on the run. Ha, SWork, do your thing. SWork, keep it lit. Bullseye, keep your aim. Yeah, we up on the jib. North side, that's the way. Ready or not, here we come. SWork, keep the energy. Look, yeah, we never unplug. SWork, show some love.
Social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works. Social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works. Yeah, SWorks. Everyone put it in their hands. You know it's a vibe. They're waiting in line to get up and flood up the stands. Yeah, we in this together. We feeling like fam. It's all about peace. So pull up with friends. You better come through with you and your crew, cause everybody going in. SWorks, so we keep it lit. You can see how we move the city from the west side to the east. Ooh, you can feel it how we leave through. It's all about the youth. Change the world through the tunes. Make the world to a better place. And SWorks, what we do.
Social works, social works, social works, social works, social works. Social works. Keep my family out the dirt. This organization, we stopping no Satan and open, but we call it SWorks. Action on tailor the killer verse. I do on my family, my city hurt. They killing our babies, this war going crazy. I pray for my city to reimburse. Running schools for the kiddies. We the city, yeah, we litty. All I know
now, here we come. South side, west side, east side, north side. Up on the run, we ain't finna none. We came in the party, we here for the fun. Celebrate life, the party we young. Sky is the limit, we looking above. We up in the sun, no matter what, we stay on the run. Ha, SWork, do your thing. SWork, keep it lit. Bullseye, keep your aim. Yeah, we up on the jib. North side, that's the way. Ready or not, here we come. SWork, keep the energy. Look, yeah, we never unplug. SWork, show some love.
Social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works. Social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works. Yeah, S works. Everyone put it in their hands. You know it's a vibe. They're waiting in line to get up and flood up the stands. Yeah, we in this together. We feeling like fam. It's all about peace. So pull up with friends. You better come through with you and your crew, cause everybody going in. S works, so we keep it lit. You can see how we move the city from the west.
SWorkshops are a series of online workshops featuring the many incredibly talented friends of SocialWorks. This series aims to inspire and educate, bringing local and national creatives live to your smartphone. They will be sharing and teaching specific aspects of their craft. A wide variety of professions, interests, and hobbies are represented within our curriculum. Did we mention it's a fundraiser too? The stay-at-home notice has students wondering what's to come. For some, graduation and prom will both be canceled. This campaign will directly fundraise a celebration event for those students within the Chicagoland area. Once it's safe, of course. Tune in to any of our socials for one or all of the SWorkshops. You can find the full schedule of programming at socialworksshy.org or on our Instagram. Classes start Monday, April 13th. We'll see you there.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I am Krystal Corley, and I'm with Remax Premier. Today, I will be presenting on buying a home made easier. I'd first just like to take this opportunity to thank SocialWorks for putting this together and giving me the opportunity to present this with you all. It's a great thing what they're doing. There is a fundraiser for all the kids of 2020 who were unable to attend their prom today due to COVID, or this year due to COVID. They're raising money. The link should be in the video, I believe, at the bottom. If you guys are able to, please reach out and donate for them. I remember how much prom was for me, and I would have been very sad to have missed that. So when it's safe to do so, they plan on creating a prom for the high school kids of 2020. So please look at that. But like I said, today we'll be talking about buying a home. I created an agenda, and so real estate and the buying process is multifaceted. You're working with a realtor and a lender really primarily throughout the process. I'm going to be speaking about from a realtor perspective. Financing is a whole nother ball game. And so I'll lightly touch on financing, but I won't go too in depth into that. If you want some lender referrals, I'd be happy to send you some. But as I have on the screen now is the agenda, which I plan to go through today. So I'll give you an introduction. I'll have pros and cons of buying. And in that section, I'll talk about advantages to buying, types of financing, again, at a high level, and costs to expect. I'll talk about strategies to purchasing because you can want a condominium, a house, or a 2 to 4 flat, which all come with different responsibilities. I'll speak about the buying process, which I find a lot of buyers are unfamiliar with, just like what the actual steps are. And then I'll talk about the Chicago market. I know that's what a lot of people are wondering with COVID. And I want this to kind of be informal. So I'll try to stop between the large sections like pros and cons and strategies to purchasing to see if there's questions, because I don't want to get too far down and you forget the question you had. So I'll get started. Okay. So about me, my name is Krystal Corley. Like I said earlier, I've been a realtor for 6 years. I was born and raised in Chicago. I know a lot of people on here may be from Chicago. So a Chicago question that always gets asked is, what high school did you go to? I went to Walter Payton. Woo woo. And then I went to Howard, came back, worked in corporate America for a little bit, and then I switched over into real estate in 2014. But I really had the advantage and privilege of growing up in real estate. My mom has been a realtor my entire life. So in high school and in elementary school, we were always going to the offices. I've sold over 50 units in Chicago, and I've sold all over Chicago, even Evanston and Oak Park. I've gone as far north as Rogers Park in Uptown. I've gone as far south as South Shore and Woodlawn. I've gone west to Humboldt and Logan Square. I've sold in Westtown. I've sold in Streeterville, River North, you name it. I'm pretty familiar with the city. And another thing I wanted to talk about is just the importance of realtors in this day and age. Zillow and Redfin and all these sites are so prominent. And I find that they're really good resources for you to see what the market is offering and get an idea of what finishes you like and how many bedrooms and bathrooms you like and what neighborhood you want to live in. But when it comes to actually buying a home, you do want an advisor, and that's what a realtor is, a liaison and an advocate throughout the process. You'll have to be connected with inspectors and real estate attorneys, appraisers, and these are all things that as a realtor we're just way more familiar with, and will make your process a lot smoother without you having to worry about all of those. As realtors, we're knowledge banks. We're familiar with the community areas. We're familiar with new developments that are taking place in different communities. We know the market evaluation. We can look at a place and tell you, is this overpriced? Is it underpriced? And like I said before, we are advisors throughout. So we really serve as liaisons and kind of the managers throughout the entire process. It's an emotional roller coaster, but once you finish it, I promise you, you're just so happy. I can attest to it. Okay, so let's get into it and go into the pros and cons of buying. So on the left, you'll see home ownership, and on the right, renting. And these are both advantages to either or. I'm not one of those realtors who's just going to try to sell you on buy, buy, buy. Buying may not make sense for where you are in your life, but there are advantages to both. So for home ownership, there's stability, which in my mind is a lesser chance of you being displaced, which happens a lot in our communities in Chicago. I can't speak too much throughout the United States, but in Chicago, stability is important. You don't have to worry about your landlord raising your rent every year. You have your fixed payments, which is the next one. I won't go too much into this, but your principal and your mortgage payment will relatively remain the same over 30 years if you go with a fixed mortgage. The only thing that may cause that to change are your taxes, unless you live in a condominium, and then you have HOAs, but that's a different ball game. And again, for further more detailed questions, you all can feel free to reach out to me, Krystal Corley at remax.net or Krystal Bliss on Instagram. I look at both. Another advantage are tax incentives. Once you own a home, you're able to write off your mortgage interest and your property taxes. Ownership benefits. Unfortunately, in the society we live in, homeowners are prioritized over tenants, and that's just a fact. When you're looking at condominium buildings, if you're a homeowner, you're allowed to be on the board. However, if you're a renter in a condominium building, you don't have that same advantage. I don't even believe you're allowed to vote for things that may happen in your building as a renter. But as an owner, your vote matters more, unfortunately. For equity, equity is a really big thing. The best way I can describe this is simple math. Let's say you buy a house for $100,000, and in 5 years you decide to sell this house for $150,000, but you've made payments on your home, so now you only owe $90,000. So your equity is that $60,000 price, like the difference between your market value now and 5 years later versus when you bought it. Whereas with renting, you're essentially just throwing that money, unfortunately, as it sounds, away each month. But for renting, there are advantages such as a short-term commitment. You don't have to worry about like finding a renter if you move or selling your place if you have to move. And then you don't really have to worry about repair and maintenance costs. Those are all costs that get transferred to the landlord. So there are pros to renting too. It really depends on where you are in your life and what you want to be responsible for. So financing tools, again, here I'm going to speak very, very high level because I am not a lender. I am a realtor, but I know that that is what most people are interested in. How much is this going to cost? What do I need in terms of being able to secure it? So when you're buying a home, there's usually you do a mortgage, which is through a bank, or you have cash. If you have cash, please get at me ASAP because you are certainly ready to go. But for a mortgage, there's different types of mortgage financing. So there's fixed rate, which you have FHA loans, conventional loans, 203K, VA, and then adjustable rates. Most of my clients usually do fixed rates, which are you have a fixed interest rate and your payment is amortized over 30 years. So that $100,000 house payment is then broken up into interest and principal for 30 years, and you're paying the same amount each month for 30 years with the exception of your taxes and insurance. High level requirements for, sorry if you guys see me looking over here to the right, I'm just trying to monitor my time. High level requirements for financing FHA. Today, the minimum credit score is around 640, but you can purchase a home with as little as 3.5% down. So again, I still use $100,000 because it's just easy math for me in my head while I'm speaking to you all about this. So 3.5% of 100,000 is $3,500 down for a down payment if you do FHA. Granted, there are very few properties in Chicago for $100,000, so don't get too excited, but I'm just trying to explain it in math terms that is easy to comprehend. Conventional is today the minimum credit score is 620, but if you're at that 620 credit score, the way the lenders have explained it to me is that it requires a 20% down. You can get conventional at lower percentages down, but they typically require a higher credit score. Banks will also look into your debt ratio and your income to help decide what amount is appropriate for you to be able to buy, which later on throughout this deck, I'll show what the buying process is, and it'll touch when I believe you should speak to a lender if you're interested in buying, which, short story, this is a, damn, I forgot the joke I was gonna say. Anyway, this is one of the first things you should be doing. So if you're really interested in buying, please get at me as soon as this is over, and I'll put you in contact with several lenders. So I encourage you to interview them and see what plans and types of programs they can offer you. There's also first-time home buyer credits and IDA programs, which they can also talk to you about. So estimated cost to close. This is in no way intended to be what you are expected to pay. This is just trying to give you an idea of how you can calculate to see if you're ready on your own. I pulled this data from the MLS, which is the real estate services in Illinois, and the median price shows what the median price in Chicago is for each of these types of property types. So attached single is like a condominium or a townhouse, and in Chicago right now, the median price is $335,000. For a single family home, the median price is $250,000. In 2 to 4 units, the median price is around $290,000. Now, there are plenty of properties that fall below these numbers, and there are plenty of properties that fall above these numbers. So your total out-of-pocket cost, which is the last column on the right, will vary depending on if you're looking for something more expensive or less expensive. So this is just to give you an idea of, do you have enough money saved? I don't encourage anyone going into this process trying to turn $5,000 into $25,000. It's just going to be stressful. So it's better to be prepared. So I did this on a FHA type loan, right? So the minimum loan down payment, that is this column next to the median price, that's calculated at 3.5% of the column of the median price. So, and then closing costs are usually between 2.5 to 3.5%. Now, what are your closing costs? That's your attorney fee charges, the fee charges. Those are the type of fees that are included in there. And the lender usually tells you to estimate 2.5 to 3.5% of the sales price. So I did that on 3% of the sales price to be in the middle. The inspection, that's typically paid out of pocket, not out of your closing costs. And I have a range for depending on the type of property type. And then your appraisal, also paid out of pocket. So your total out of pocket cost could be somewhere around these numbers if these are the numbers you're looking at, right? Now, if you're looking at a home for $150,000, you can apply the same principles I applied. The inspection and appraisal won't change. Those numbers are pretty fixed, but the minimum loan down payment and the closing costs will change depending on the sales price. I'm gonna pause for questions right after this, I promise. So I have under here, can be negotiated into your own loan, the closing costs. Closing costs do not have to be paid out of pocket. You can negotiate them into your loan. The best way for me to describe this is you're offering $100,000 again. You want your closing costs to be assumed in your mortgage. So you offer $103,000, that's that 3% on top, and then you ask the seller for a $3,000 closing cost credit to be applied to your closing costs. So now your closing costs have been assumed into your mortgage, which is helping you come to the table with less cash. So this small table with the highlighted red total out-of-pocket costs without closing costs is what you could expect to look at if you negotiate your closing costs into your contract. And from right here, I am going to pause and see if we have questions. I'm just going to check on this app to see if we have any. Don't be shy. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to read them as I'm going through. Did I? Okay, so okay. Let's see. So Kenyatta asks, are there any ways to cut back on these costs, like using someone else's appraisal if they recently completed it in the same area? Typically, your bank wants to use the appraiser that they send out. The appraiser in Chicago, appraising is very tricky because we have streets that significantly divide housing prices depending on the neighborhood you're in. But your bank is going to want to use the appraiser that they send out to come appraise your house. I, as a realtor, would be able to provide comps too. But the best way on cutting out some of these costs is to either negotiate your closing costs into your contract or look for different type of grants that might be offered through IDA and things like that. I'm gonna answer one more and then I'm gonna keep on going. I'll do this one. Did it pop up? Sorry. So I believe Gwen says, so is it cheaper to buy a home than a condo? I will go into that in a little bit. It depends on how much the house costs and how much your assessments are at the condo. But I'll just keep going and you all will see that being played out. Okay. So strategies to buy. This ties right into that last question. You can do a condominium, a single family home, or a 2 to 4 unit under residential or land. But you could also do more units like 5 plus under commercial. But I'm just going to stick to residential with condominium for sale. I mean, condominium, single family, and 2 to 4 units. So with condominiums, this is a home I sold in Uptown. It was 282. The HOA was 210, and the taxes were 2436. At a down payment on FHA at 3.5%, the payments monthly came out to 1836. And you'll see in the single family home when I do next what those numbers look like when you don't have to worry about paying your assessments. So some of the pros to buying in a condo is it's part of an association. You have less responsibility. You usually have a maintenance person in the building who can come help with plumbing issues, light bulbs. They typically don't help with appliances, but you share expenses for fixing the roof. You share expenses for exterior fixing. You share the expenses with your other condominium holders in your building. So you have less responsibility and you're part of an association, which can be a pro. Like I said, you share major expenses. Some condominiums have amenities, like they'll have someone who comes out and shovels up the snow for you. Maybe it'll have a doorman, maybe it'll have a pool. It depends on the type of condominium. They range, right? You can have a condominium with 3 units in it, and you can have a condominium with 300 units in it. So there's a wide range. But lastly, in a condominium, one of the things you just have to remember is your neighbors' opinions are still valid. That's what is the hardest thing to grasp is I just bought a house and my neighbor is telling me what I can and can't do in my house. They can sometimes make those complaints to a board in a condominium association. So you do still have to be mindful of your neighbors, or at least depending on how big your condominium is. Or your condominium building. So that's buying with a condominium. So if you look at this number, 1836, I believe the next one is a single family home. So this is a home that I sold in South Shore, 7147 South Luella. And you notice that the payment for this is $1472. The price, let's see, this one's $235. That one was $282. So it is less, but you don't have to worry about your HOA payments. That HOA payment is added monthly. So whatever your payment is, and then you have your HOAs are $300. Now that's added onto your payment to your lender. So that's just one thing you have with all those amenities that come with the condominium building. You also have additional payments. For a single family home, the nice thing is you have sole ownership. So you have more privacy and you have more freedom to do what you want in your own home, less people telling you what to do. But you're responsible for all major expenses and maintenance. If something happens to the roof, that's now your responsibility. Your responsibility to shovel the snow in front, your responsibility to mow your grass, all of those things now fall under you. Like I said, you have privacy and you have declaration of your own rules. You get to say what you want to do in your home. The next is the 2 to 4 units, which I will say a good, probably 30% of my clients, this is what they're looking to do. So this is a building that I sold in South Shore also, 7538 South Phillips. And this client was looking to get cash flow. So this is another strategy. The sales price was $275,000. The taxes were $3512, but there's no HOA payment on a 2 to 4 unit. So at 3.5% down, his payment was around $2,002 a month. The pros to this is you have sole ownership and you own the entire building. So you get to set the rules for the building and what renters will need to adhere by when they're in your unit. One of the things you are responsible for all major expenses and maintenance, and that's in each of the units. So if something happens to the kitchen in one of your tenants' units, you're responsible for fixing that. So if you're looking to do a 2 to 4 units, I heavily encourage you to have a nice cushion of reserves, because Chicago's architecture is older by nature, and you never know what can happen as soon as you close. And as soon as you close, it is your responsibility. But another really good advantage of this is cash flow income. When I bought my first place, I bought a condo, and if I would have done it all over again and been living in the condo, I would have bought a 2 to 4 unit as my first purchase because of the cash flow income. For example, in this building, we had 2 rental units that were already rented out and were receiving $22.91 monthly. And so his payment was $2,002, which left him not paying rent because it was being covered by the other 2 units, and then receiving $290 a month in addition. I mean, that money isn't that much, but for you to be able to live somewhere and not have to pay rent and the other units pay the rent for you, I mean, your mortgage for you, it's a great deal. You're living there, you're building equity, but it does come with responsibility. And if you are not ready for that responsibility, I would not suggest diving into buying a 2 to 4 unit. Let me see what the next section is. I'll pause again right here to see if we have any questions. Let me go to this app again. Thank you. So Vicky asked, did it approve? Vicky asked, I'm not sure if it approved. What type? There we go. What type of property would you recommend for someone looking to buy an investment property? If you're looking to buy an investment property, I would recommend you buy a 2 to 4 unit. I would recommend a 2 to 4 unit. I would just also recommend and highly encourage that you do have those cash reserves to make sure that the building is in good standing and like maintained, so that way you don't have to worry about expenses popping up. But the best investment strategy would be to buy a 2 to 4 unit in Chicago. Let's see. Sorry, I am trying to. Sorry, I'm having some. Can you talk about her? Okay. I can't tell if these questions are going live, so I'm just gonna read the question aloud. Someone asked, would you recommend one bank over another? The only recommendations I have when it comes to banks is to interview 2 to 3 banks. And I typically suggest to do a actual mortgage bank or a lender like Wintrust or Guaranteed Rate or People's Home Equity over a bank like Chase or Bank of America, just because loans typically end up being sold to those banks anyway, but it's much more pleasant to work with a lender or a mortgage bank throughout the process because there's more transparency versus working with a large bank. And we are going through time, so I'm just going to keep going. So the buying process, this is what I find most buyers to be the most unfamiliar with. And I think it's very helpful to know what the process looks like before going into it. I found this on a Remax in Texas's website, and I thought it was really good and very comparable to the Chicago market. So the beginning, it's meet with a realtor or meet with a lender to get pre-approved. I use those two interchangeably, either meeting with a realtor or meeting with a lender, but it is important to get pre-approved before starting. Even today, a lot of homes aren't letting you view it unless you show a pre-approval because of COVID. They want to make sure that people coming into their properties are serious about buying. And usually if you go through a pre-approval process, that indicates some level of seriousness. The pre-approval process also lets you determine with a lender what is an appropriate amount for you to spend on a home. You can tell the lender what your income is, what you want your monthly payments to be, and what area you're trying to live in. And they'll give you a price range. If you want a condominium, they'll tell you what is the maximum HOA and taxes that you would be able to afford. And it really just helps guide the whole process. I hate looking at places where they're significantly out of the price range and getting a buyer's hopes up as to this is something that they could buy. And now that they have these high expectations and it doesn't fit within those expectations. Or you're looking for something significantly below what you're able to afford and you can't find something you like. But if you just knew that you could afford a little bit more, maybe that would open the doors to more opportunity and more homes. So getting pre-approved, I strongly recommend. I try not to go out with people unless they've been pre-approved, because as a realtor, I want to work with people also who are ready to move forward in the process. And you can't do anything without a pre-approval letter. If we find a house that you like, we can't put an offer on it if you don't have that pre-approval letter. And today, depending on the neighborhood and depending on the location, the home you like, if it's really nice, the chances are it's going to be multiple offers. And you don't want 2 days to go by waiting to get a pre-approval and then you lose the home. And now you're comparing all these other homes to this beautiful home that you can no longer get. So I just highly recommend pre-approval at the beginning. And it only takes like 2 business days, honestly, to get pre-approved. Very short. So then you start shopping for your house. This is the process or the step that varies the most between buyers. Some buyers I've gone out. I had one buyer, we went out one weekend and she picked a house, but she was very specific. She knew the exact neighborhood she wanted to be in. There was no changing the neighborhood, and what was available is what she chose from. I've also gone out with buyers who took 6 and 7 months to find a place. So that process or that step varies depending on who you are and what you're looking for. So if you have a timeline and you kind of have an idea of how you are when it comes to shopping, I would just put that into perspective. How long is it going to take me to find the right home? This 35 to 45 days is you finding the home in a lot less than 6 months. I interpret this 35 to 45 days to start once we have once we have gotten to this negotiate counter right here. Once you have an accepted offer and an accepted contract, that's when that 35 to 45 business days start. So then you negotiate, you get an accepted contract. This doesn't really apply in Chicago, opening an escrow with a title company. Escrow is a different matter. If you're very interested, please reach out to me separately and I will go into you more details about escrow. But for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to keep going. After you have an accepted contract, you have an inspection on your home and you have a contingency period, which a lot of people don't know. So when you have a contract, you're able to inspect your home. If there's anything you don't like from that inspection, you are able to cancel your contract and not suffer any consequences or penalties. This inspection is there to help you determine that this house is a great house. Now, all inspections, I've never done an inspection where nothing came back. There's always something that comes back on an inspection report. But it's just, what items are you okay with dealing with? Are you okay with a leaky faucet? Sure, maybe. But you're not okay with a roof that's about to cave in the next year. So those are things that an inspector would be able to tell you. And as a realtor, I have referrals for an inspector. After the inspection, when we get the report back, you have the opportunity to negotiate repairs. And then the loan process is happening simultaneously with completing the inspection and attorney review process. So on the other end, it's almost like they're flowing parallel. So you're completing the loan process, you're ordering the appraisal. And honestly, at this point, after the appraisal is ordered, there's less to do with myself as the realtor and the house, and it's all just through the bank at this point. The loan package to underwriting, loan approval, closing disclosure, that all is the bank confirming that the house approved at the price that we have it contracted for. They're confirming your income. They're confirming the underwriting material. They will ask you for paperwork that you have already submitted. It will be frustrating. It can be frustrating, but I am here to help you go through this emotional roller coaster the best way possible. And then after the loan clears, we have our final walkthrough. So when we negotiated those repairs, right before we close, we go to the house and make sure that the seller did the repairs that they said they were going to do. And then we go to the closing, and at the closing is when you exchange keys. you get that big loan mortgage with the bank, you start building your credit up, and you have your home. So yes, that is the buying process. I feel like I covered it in a very short time, but I really wanted to speak about it. And because it's kind of in depth, I am going to look to see if there are questions about the buying process. If not, I will keep going. Sorry, I'm refreshing my page. And so, yes, while you guys are here and waiting for me to upload these questions, let's also please remember that the Social Works is pinned below. If you're able, please donate to help them for the class of 2020. The class of 2020 was truly dubbed this year, in all honesty, and the least we can do is provide them with a good prom. I don't know about you all, but I loved my prom. I had one of the best entrances on a horse carriage, very cheap, but very, okay. This is a really good question. So someone asked, when purchasing a 2 to 4 unit, is it still fruitful to have a building manager? I feel like that depends on how many units you own. If you own less than 5 units, I do not think it is worth it to have a building manager, because the amount that the building manager, or the cost that you're incurring with the building manager, you're still trying to gain a real cash flow. It takes a while to become stable in a 2 to 4 unit building. If you own more than 5 units, that's when I would start considering a building manager, because then that's also a lot more for you to handle. That's if things are happening to the unit, that's a lot to be going back and forth and collecting rent. But below 5 units, I would not recommend it unless you don't live in the city or don't live in the state. But if you can and you have someone who is able to manage that for you, before you have 5 units, that is what I would recommend you do. But it also depends on what you're comfortable with earning. If you're comfortable with earning $1,000 and you have $1,500 coming in as income, then sure, get a building manager. But I personally, for the 2 to 4 units I do not have a building manager, and I do not plan on getting one until I have more units. But at the same time, I am also a realtor, so that helps. So hopefully that answered that. I'll answer that one. I'll answer those in the next section. A lot of these are being covered in the next section, so I may just go on to the next section, because a lot of the questions in this that I'm seeing are covered in the next section. So I'll just keep moving forward. Let me pull my timer back up. Okay. So the Chicago market, that is what everybody wants to know. Chicago has seen a dramatic decrease in supply since COVID has begun. I have outlined in red new listings in this first box. This is for single family homes throughout the city of Chicago. This is overall Chicago. So in terms of community areas, reach out to me after this and we can get more into details and into specifics about a specific community area. But in Chicago, for the month of April 2019 versus April 2020, we saw a decrease of almost 50% in new listings. And over the year, so from year to date, we've seen a decrease in 20% of new listings. That is a dramatic decrease in supply. A lot of homeowners and condo owners are at a point right now where they are worried about putting their home on the market for a couple of reasons, right? They don't want people coming in their house every single day with COVID going on, which is an extremely infectious virus. So that is instilling fear. They also don't want to have their house listed on the market and create like gaining market time, and buyers are afraid to go out because of COVID. So that is why we are seeing this decrease. I know the stocks aren't showing these type of decreases, but in the housing market, we are seeing that people are not listing their homes or putting them on the market nearly at the same rate as they were doing last year around the same time. However, I have also found that once you find a house that's on the market, there are usually several homeowners who are thinking about selling their home, but they just don't want to put it on the market yet. So I have a client now where we were looking for 1 or 2 houses, and at this point we found 5 other houses where they plan on listing them. They're just waiting for COVID to pass. But if you look at the new listings, we see that that has decreased, right? But if you look at the median sales price for the month of April from 2020 to 2019, it's increased by over 15%. And for the year to date, it's increased by almost 10%. That's because the supply has decreased. There is still a demand for people to buy homes, and it's driving up those prices, especially in desirable areas or location. In Chicago, location is very important. And I won't say that COVID is going to impact every neighborhood in Chicago the same. So to truly feel or get an understanding as to how the virus may impact a neighborhood, again, I feel like you should reach out to me separately, because I don't see COVID having the same impact in the Gold Coast that it may have in Grand Boulevard, right? Because it's also what type of jobs in these different communities do they have. In certain communities or certain areas where they're mainly IT jobs and professional services, they have less layoffs than small businesses and different like retail employment and things like that. And so where those communities are, people who are working in those jobs, that's where we're seeing larger fallbacks in terms of income and economic spending. In addition, so my thought just left my head. Okay, that's COVID. Let me go on to the next one because this is still similar. Hopefully my thought comes back to my head. This is a condominiums or attached single family. That's condominiums and townhomes. We've seen similar decreases. New listings are down 56% this month from last year in April, and year to date, they're down 20%. It's a little higher than detached single families, but nearly the same. But again, here we're seeing the same thing. Median sales price up 6%, and for the month of April, and for the entirety of the year, up 7%. But the closed sales, we're also seeing down 22% and down 5%. Under contract, we're also seeing down 58%. I believe that people right now are scared and they don't know how COVID is going to impact the long run. This is what I was going to say. However, the mortgage companies are trying to handle this a lot differently than they handled 2008. In 2008, we saw mortgage companies giving large bailouts to banks, right? They're starting at the top of the ladder and hoped it would trickle down in some way, but it didn't at all, which is what we saw, a whole bunch of foreclosures. This time around, they're trying to create deferment plans and assistance programs to help people not foreclose on their loans. So for people who are looking for this new foreclosure crisis that may hit like it hit in 2008, I do not personally think that's going to happen. I do think that we will see an uptick in foreclosures in neighborhoods that have more of a working class community. But it will not happen next month or next 2 or 3 months, because mortgage companies are working with lenders right now to avoid that. So if it does happen, it's going to be, I feel like 6 months from now, or maybe 8 months from now, because that'll be when maybe the banks can no longer afford to keep letting people defer their payments. But in the immediate future, I don't see anything close to those numbers from 2008 happening right now, just because we are really trying to tackle this from a bottom up approach this time, is what it looks like, at least. So yes, the listings are down, supply is down. So when you are going out there and looking, you really have to be ready. This stress is having to be ready. Depending on the area you're looking in, I don't believe that you're going to see a dramatic decrease in property values in higher class neighborhoods or higher income neighborhoods. That's what I meant to say, because less people in those neighborhoods have lost their jobs. More people in those neighborhoods have applied for the loan programs that the government was offering. So and they're working with the banks. So for those looking for those 2008 deals, I'm sorry to break it to you, I don't think that that's going to happen. We may see some decline, but I don't think that it will be until at least 6 months from now. See how much time we have. Okay. And then this is the last slide, and I'll go to questions after this, but I just wanted to give you all an idea of some of the homes I have sold. This no way encompasses all of them, but they tend to be all around Chicago. I've done Hyde Park, Westtown, River North, Bronzeville, Bucktown, Avalon Park, different price ranges. I'm here for everyone. I'm here to help everyone. Yes, and so I'm thankful that you all are here and listening to this and trying to get this information. And I will go to questions now because that completes my presentation. Okay, so let's see here. I will refresh the page. Okay, so let's see here. Someone asked, can you talk more about personally managing your 2 to 4 units? Yes, I can talk more about that. I have an advantage because I'm a realtor, but at the same time, I'm a very hands-on person in general when it comes to real estate. I have found that when I have left certain tasks up to other people, you have to provide the same management over them to make sure it's done correctly. And with the time I was spending doing that, I thought it would just be more sufficient to do it myself. So I rent all my units out myself. I have an advantage because I'm a realtor. I'm able to post on the MLS. But as an owner, you are also able to list your place for rent on Zillow, which is where most people will look for rentals, which is why I typically try to stay within sales. Just because rentals is such a free market, I don't really like to get involved in that as much anymore. But you are able as an owner to list your place on Zillow and rent your place out. I do suggest finding a very reliable handyman because that's really essentially what you need. Someone reaches out to you about the furnace not working, you have a good handyman or HVAC guy, and you just send him over there to go get it done. I would recommend keeping a lockbox on your property so that people you trust can enter the property without you having to be there. That saves you time going back and forth, depending on whether the property is in the neighborhood which you live or not. In buying a 2 to 4 unit, the inspection is very, very, very important. It is an inspector's job to tell you everything that's wrong with it. So it can seem overwhelming. And you have to realize that with Chicago architecture, again, it's very old. So certain things you just have to be willing to accept. I can give a personal story. When we purchased recently, the building was roughly in like good condition, but the roof was really old. Most people would not purchase still, right? Because the roof is old. I just argued for a little bit more of a credit and we still went with the purchase because in South Shore, the property values are going up and the building, it was a 3-unit building, very hard to come by. And I thought that the pros and the benefits down the line outweighed the risk of the roof. As a homeowner, yes, I know that I need to repair that roof. That's an expense we're going to incur eventually. But I wouldn't suggest getting into 2 to 4 units if you're looking for a quick investment. It's definitely something that matures over time. And so having a good handyman, having a good inspector to let you know what to expect, having your property well maintained, because that helps the tenants take pride in their home too. No one wants to live in a place where they're not cleaning the common areas and mowing the grass. shoveling the snow. Those are all things that we do at our building. And so, yeah, I hope that that was helpful. Let me look for some other questions. Okay, this is an important one because I feel like a lot of people don't know this and are sometimes afraid to ask a realtor because of they don't know how I get paid. So how does a realtor like yourself make a profit when you sell a home? What percent do you make on a sale? Okay, as a buyer, you do not have to worry about paying a realtor at all. The realtor expenses comes from the seller's side. So the listing agent typically has an agreement with the seller when they list the home. And when they list the home, they agree that if another agent brings a buyer, they split the commission that the seller is giving them with the other agent, myself. So, in terms of buying real estate, there is no payment you as a buyer would owe to me. My services, as far as you're concerned, would be free, but the seller would be paying me. So it's even more of an incentive to use a realtor and not try to do it on your own. One thing I will say, when you're looking at Zillow and you find a nice home that you like, sometimes when you like that house and you go look at it, it's the listing agent showing you the house. And the listing agent often already has a relationship with the seller. Now, you can have dual agencies, but with a dual agent, that's when that listing agent is now representing you as the buyer who came to look at the house without a realtor, and the seller. They can't really advise you. You can tell them what you want to do, and they are essentially just the messenger. So if a realtor doesn't cost you anything personally, I advise you on having a realtor. So that way you have something who is advising you and not just taking what you say and giving it as a message to the seller. Because as a dual agent, that is what they're responsible to do. They are not allowed to advise you because then it's a conflict of interest. Let's see here. What other questions? This is a good question from Mike. Should you expect HOA fees to continue to increase every year? Honestly, if you're in a well-maintained building, you should not expect them to increase every year. They're usually set so that way you can build the reserves and everything. Depending also on the type of building, you'll have strong reserves or lesser reserves. If you're in like a 2 to 3 unit building, those buildings typically have a small reserve. But you should not expect your HOA fees to continue to increase every single year. Maybe every 5 years, something like that, but not every year. If they're raising every year, then that might be an issue. Okay, let's see here. Here's another good one. Is there a certain percent of the value of the property that you would keep in reserves for 2 to 4 units? From Fred. So yes, a lender, depending on the type of loan you're getting, if it's FHA, I believe they require you to have 3 months of payments, of mortgage payments as a reserve. If it is conventional, I believe they require you to have 6 months of monthly payments as a reserve. That is what the bank will require you to have in your bank account in order to be able to close. I find that that tends to be a good number. Again, it may fluctuate depending on the type of 2 to 4 unit you're buying. If you're buying a turnkey, the bank situation or the bank requirements tend to work well because you shouldn't have too many updates that you have to do. If you're buying something that needs work, I would consider having more in reserves, like 6. Even if you're doing FHA, I would consider having 6 months because you have to account for vacancy rates. Like if someone moves out and now the unit is empty and you're looking to find a new renter, depending on the area, it can happen quicker, it can happen slower. So I would suggest to have 3 to 6 months in reserves between for a 2 to 4 unit. Let's see here. A lot of you guys are having the same questions. Here is a good question. What estimators do you recommend to help buyers estimate a reasonable purchase price? I recommend a realtor. That is what we are here for, to help you. We will provide you with a comp report from the MLS showing the recent sold within 1 year. That's the length of time that an appraisal will do. 1 year within a 1 mile radius. However, the closer to the location, the better. And the shorter time period, the better. But I recommend you having a realtor to determine that. Okay. Here's a question. Do you have to be 18 to become a realtor? I believe it was 21, but you know what? They may have just changed it to 18. I know at 18 you could become a leasing agent. I think they just changed it to 18, but I would have to double check. It's either 21 or 18. Here is a question. Do you feel that there are various condo single family homes that are available for sale that are not listed on a website such as Redfin or Zillow? There may be some. However, I think that anyone that is serious about selling their home has it listed on Redfin or Zillow or the MLS. So I would suggest looking at those or touching base with a realtor to get listings that are listed with the MLS sent out to you. So we are coming up on the end of my time. I wanted to thank you all again for joining in. I hope that this was resourceful for you all. Please, if you have any questions, email me at krystalcorley@remax.net. Reach out to me on Instagram, Krista or call me or text me. My number is public, so I'll give it here, 312-498-8963. And again, please donate to Social Works if you can. This is a wonderful program that they're putting on to help seniors enjoy their 2020 prom. It was very memorable for me. We would like for it to be memorable for them as soon as they are able to get back out in these streets. So thank you all for joining again, and I look forward to hearing from you off this platform.
Side to the east, ooh, you can feel how we leave through. It's all about the youth. Change the world through the tunes. Make the world to a better place. And SWorks what we do.
Social works, social works, social works, social, social works, social works, social works, social works. Keep my family out the dirt. This organization, we stopping no Satan and open, but we call it SWorks. Action on Taylor the killer verses. I do on my family, my city hurt. They killing our babies, this war going crazy. I pray for my city to reimburse. Private schools for the kids. Where the city at, we litty. All I know is it's work. Working hard, keep it busy. Know the life keep it tricky, but please just let me finish. Let me just be a witness. SWorks handle business.
Social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works.
Ready or not, here we come. South side, west side, east side, north side. Up on the run, we ain't for the none. We came in the party, we here for the fun. Celebrate life, the party we young. Sky's the limit, we looking above. We up in the sun, no matter what, we stay on the run. Ha, SWork, do your thing. SWork, keep it lit. Bullseye, keep your aim. Yeah, we up on the jib. North side, that's the way. Ready or not, here we come. SWork, keep the energy. Look, yeah, we never unplug. SWork, show some love. Yeah.
Social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works. Social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works, social works. Yeah, SWorks. S-Works, everyone put it in their hands. You know it's a vibe, they're waiting in line to get up and flood up the stands. Yeah, we in this together, we feeling like fam. It's all about peace, so pull up with friends. You better come through with you and your crew, cause everybody going in. S-Works, so we keep it lit. You can see how we move the city from the west side to the east. Ooh, you can feel it how we leave through. It's all about the youth. Change the world through the tunes. Make the